came to Jones Farm due to coming through central reception and assignment facility, and I do my remaining 4 months of my sentence. Prior to me coming to prison, I had a vindictive life. I have over 27 years in the state prison system, so I've had over 33 years of drug use and alcohol use that led me in which I call a spiritual void in my life, and lacking faith and trust in something greater than me. And over the last 4 or 5 years, I've developed a sense of peace with myself because I went back to, I was raised as a Roman Catholic, went back to the church, and as I come through the system and finish up my sentence, it helps me stay on what I call spiritual grounds. It makes me stronger in my faith and stronger in my position in life. At the same time, I have a strong belief that God works through people on a daily basis and helps guide me in the right direction instead of the wrong direction. As far as religious programming, I go to Catholic services on Monday nights, Thursday nights. I also do Christian services on Sunday nights. Programs of Catholic services that I went to were Mass, and also took communion, and it's also like a Bible study that we have, and I'm finding enjoyment learning more and more about the apostles and finding more faith every day that goes by. I enjoy it. I mean, there's plenty of opportunities for religious services here at Jones Farm, and that's also a craft. They give us the material and stuff we need, and plenty of opportunities to do what we need to do, as far as keeping faith and search for a better way of life. That's what I pray for on a daily basis, to find guidance from them and try to make my days better than the next day. The hope that I have is that I walk out of the system and I don't return to an active life of use. The only way I believe that I can change that is through faith in something greater than me, which is God, and following specific steps of a program that I choose to follow, and that leads me to spiritual grounds. I see miracles happen on a daily basis, and I believe that it's the right way to go. Instead of burying emotions and feelings in your life behind something that'll destroy your life, I ask God on a daily basis to let me struggle, but let me succeed, and let me do something productive in my life instead of negative.
In the Gospel of Matthew we read, "For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, you gave me a drink. A stranger, and you welcomed me. Naked, and you clothed me. Ill, and you cared for me. In prison, and you visited me." And the righteous will answer him and say, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you a drink? When did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you ill or in prison and visit you?" The king will say to them in reply, "Amen, I say to you, whatever you did for one of these least brothers of mine, you did it for me." Welcome to the Catholic Corner. I'm Monsignor Walter Nolan. My guest today visits those who are in prison. He does this on a regular basis to help restore their faith, to heal their confessions, to be Jesus to them. Vincentian Father Marty McGeough is the coordinator of jail and prison ministry for the Diocese of Trenton. Recently, he took our camera crew from behind the walls of Jones Farm, a minimum security prison in Ewing, New Jersey, to meet and talk with a couple of the inmates there. Brother Marty, welcome to the Catholic Corner.
Nice to see you again, Monsignor.
It's great to have you. You do great work and you're a great man. In the clip at the beginning of our show, we meet an inmate, Brian. Tell me, if you can, a little bit about Brian, how you came to know him, and especially, the sharing that you do in your beautiful ministry at Jones Farm.
Well, I met Brian when he came to Jones Farm, and he immediately put in paperwork that allows him, as well as the others, to come to religious programming. And so Brian began coming to our Mass that we hold out there on Tuesday evenings. And over the time, and I've only known Brian now for about 3 or 4 months that he's been up at the farm. So I think, as he said there, he's been a product of the New Jersey Department of Corrections for over 27 years. And
It's a long time.
Long time there, and sometimes it takes a long time before somebody's able to confront himself enough to really deal with the issues that he has, which are causing his problems and his criminal behavior. So he feels that he is someone who is now getting it. I say getting it because I don't think you ever completely get it. Something you need to keep going in your journey of faith.
I think that's true, Father Marty, for all of us.
Yeah,
We did a program not too long ago about the Pope's visit to Philadelphia and the whole idea of transformation, and it's certainly true that faith is a pilgrimage and it takes a while, and the whole notion of I don't know if we ever are fully transformed, but it's certainly a.
And our Holy Father has really taken to prison ministry in the whole time of his papacy. Even when he was in Philadelphia, he went to the prison in Philly, and he spoke with the inmates who were brought out to meet with him. Somebody said it was interesting because there was a lot of "don't hug me, don't hug him, don't hug him." The only people who hugged him were the inmates. So they got away with another crime, if you will.
And I'm sure he enjoyed every hug that he got. You're the coordinator of jail and prison ministry for the diocese. Tell me a little bit, how many prisons, jails do you go to? What do you do?
Well, we have within the diocese, there are 4 county jails, one in each county, and then we have the largest federal correction prison in the country, which is at Fort Dix, as well as 5 or 6 different parts of the state Department of Corrections. Where we were was a place called Jones Farm, which is in West Trenton, very close to the Trenton Airport. We also have a private prison in Trenton where men are in a transition stage. Well, men and women are in this prison. And they're in a transition stage, moving from there to halfway houses back out into the world. My job is basically twofold with the diocese. I go to the prisons, the jails, and I will do masses, I will do confessions, whatever is needed in that sphere. The other side of my job is that I find, and with help from some other really wonderful people, Sister Liz Ganam and Sister Karina Haywood, we get volunteers and train them to do prison ministry, especially within the state system.
And what does that entail, prison ministry? What would they do? Have Bible studies?
They will do Bible studies. A number of our permanent deacons do communion services, especially at Fort Dix. They will do Catholic education programs. And this year, in the Year of Mercy, we're trying to bring about a new step, which is involving our people in what's called reentry. We want to assist men and women who are getting out of the jails and prisons to make a successful transition back into their areas. Now, a place like Fort Dix, this is a little difficult for us because it's a federal prison, so we've got people who are coming from every part of the country. But for our state prisons, we can deal with a lot of, the people who are coming out and trying to set up programs to assist them in making a successful reentry. And I guess I have seen this just in my reflections as a concrete way for us in prison ministry to really enter into Pope Francis's call for a year of mercy.
Father Marty, when you talk about that reentry, do you have contact, or do some of the volunteers have contact with those who would leave a jail or prison and go back into their life?
We're working on setting some of those things up, and we do have some contacts where they can get a hold of people to get assistance. Sometimes they need short-term housing. We have ways of being able to do that. Gotten a little bit of money from the Vincentians, which we put aside for prison ministry, particularly for reentry.
That sounds like a very important step for the men and women coming back, and for those that are willing to open up their hearts to because we walk as brothers and sisters, and that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and so we're trying to get more people involved with that now.
Do you get a lot of participation, from the inmates? I mean, do they look forward to your visits? Do they really want to be part of the programs?
That depends a lot on the prisons. I will get, in some places, I'll have 30, 40, 50 people. Jones Farm, where we were, I will generally get 5 or 6. So it just depends on the place. But, and other people will tell you this as well, these men and women are extremely grateful for my presence and for the presence of the other volunteers. Never do anything where I've been thanked as much just for showing up.
I would add to that, I sometimes, just in the work I do at a hospital, there might be an occasion that I would have, and it's always beautiful to me when you might say, God bless you, and you're leaving, and all of a sudden you hear, hey, Father, and God bless you too. I mean, it almost brings tears to your heart, and it's amazing the love that they can share.
Yeah, more often what I hear is, Father, thanks for coming.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. I think you have another inmate from Jones Farm that you interviewed.
Yes.
And let's look at this. And but first, tell me just a little bit about. I think his name is Dan.
His name is Dan, and I'd actually have known Dan for 4 years. I knew him at a different prison. Then he was transferred to Jones Farm. And about a week after we did the interview that you're going to see, he was released from Jones Farm to an evaluation center. And then we'll go to a halfway house, and hopefully by this summer, he will be free.
Well, let's see how you and Dan shared some of God's love.
I found myself in prison. I'm an alcoholic, and I had a car crash, and somebody passed away. So that's how I received my prison sentence and found myself here at Jones Farm eventually. I've been in prison now for 4 years and 1 month. My faith helped me through this thus far. I remember in the beginning when I was first in the county, laying on the floor on a mat. In my cell, I was the guy that was on the floor at first. And all I did was say Hail Mary after Hail Mary after Hail Mary on my rosary beads, because when I had to turn myself in, they allowed me to keep them. And I remember being locked down for 7 days, and it was a scary experience to be locked up for the first time. And then when I finally moved out of that section and into a more general population, I was able to get my hands on a Bible, and reading the Bible is what helped me through that period. And a lot of the stuff in the Bible, I didn't even know what I was reading. I couldn't understand the language. All I know is I was reading it, and it was helping me through what turned out to be, the worst experience of my life. Here at Jones Farm, I participate in the Catholic Mass, and when I can, the 2 Catholic studies that we have on 2 other different nights, where they review the Bible or they'll watch a religious film, something like that. Sometimes if my clerical duties keep me from that, I can't make that, but I always try and make Catholic Mass. But we have a wide array of religious programs here at the farm. The regrets I have in my life. Well, I can definitely think of one day I'd take back. Regrets in my life, I guess I would say falling away from my faith, falling away from recovery, allowing myself to get as far as I did in my addiction to bring me to this point. I was almost 40 years old by the time it had happened, and I can count hundreds of times that God got me out of it every single time. The consequences were never that great to get me to open my eyes and wake up. And it took something like this, a tragedy, somebody to die, for me to finally realize and change my life. And I've changed my life in prison, I really have. A lot of that is due to my faith, meeting you, having Mass, being able to make confession, amongst a lot of other things. But, not wising up and learning and not realizing the consequences that lie ahead of those of us with addictions. And this has got to be it. Prison's got to be the end of the road. Before I came into prison, I knew how important it was to go to confession, and I had gone, at the time, before I came in, every Saturday. And when I came in, I had missed it. I hadn't got a chance to go to confession for about the first year of being incarcerated. And when I finally got a chance to meet you and make my first confession, it's almost like taking a load off your shoulders. Amongst all the other things you're dealing with as a Catholic, knowing that you're carrying around the burden of all that sin and whatnot, to be able to unload that and have God forgive that actually helped, in the rest of your daily life in prison, as tough as it already is. So it's almost just like emptying out, taking out the garbage almost. So it really did help. Confession in prison is extremely important, I believe. I used to think that my relationship with God was pretty decent. It has changed since I've come in. I am so much more thankful now and so much more of a grateful man in my faith because, I truly believe God got me through all this. What I thought was insurmountable odds and a hill I'd never be able to climb, I've gotten through it with the help of a lot of people, but, namely God and my faith is what I believe got me through this, because I know there's got to be a greater purpose at the end of all this. Well, my advice for others, based upon my experience, if we're talking about being in prison, I would just say to people that, this is next to death. I mean, it doesn't get much more worse than being in prison and being away from your children and your loved ones. And there's really only one person that you can turn to that honestly really cares enough in here, and that's God. Don't lose your faith while you're in prison, because for a lot of people, that's the only thing that's really going to get you through. It's worked for me, and it's just the right thing to do. A lot of guys come in here, I believe, and think that that's something that they're going to put to the wayside because it may not fit the prison life or the image you want to uphold. But I'll tell you what, it really does help. Every time I go to Mass, it does help. Every time I'm able to make a confession, it does help. Every time I lay there and I pray, I have a different sense of appreciation for what I'm praying for. And that's all come from how much my faith has grown in the midst of this experience.
How much longer do you think you'll be in prison?
Well, I have about 22 months remaining, but I'm about ready to finish the quote-unquote custody portion and be able to move along to the community release any day now. My hopes for my life in the future are to carry on the relationship with God that I have and just keep trying to steadily improve it. Help people on the outside, help drivers not end up like me and have family lose loved ones and children lose parents and brothers and sisters, and stop the madness that's going on the roadways out there today. That's my purpose in life. That's my purpose in life, to take this experience out there and show people the consequences of what can happen. As I said earlier, prison needs to be the end of the road for people with addictions, I believe. There's only one more stop after this. And if this isn't enough to really wake somebody up, then I don't know what is. But if you can literally use prison, I mean, I know it's a terrible experience, but I believe this experience can be used to change your life and then go out there and help others change theirs.
Powerful, Father Marty. Powerful.
He's an interesting fellow. Oh. And he did get out shortly after we did the interview. He's in an evaluation center, and then we'll go to a halfway house. And I think he hopes that by this summer, he'll be back with his family. He'll still be on parole, but he'll be out of the system. So,
You know, when I was watching that with you, I was just thinking of a movie that really was not prisoners, but it was with a Trappist monk that was going to have his life taken, and he wrote a letter to his mother, and the letter is also very powerful. And he ends the letter by saying that someday he called the fellow that was going to, I guess, take his life, my friend of the moment. And I've always struck that, that saying that somehow, somewhere with God, in our prayer life and our love life, can we be friends of the moment, understanding that we're all brothers and sisters. And yes, I think sometimes things get done that shouldn't get done, but somehow we do root for each other with Christ and God, and hopefully we can be blessed. Please tell me, that is a moving experience. Please tell us that this is an example of how prison ministry can really transform people, impact people to become the wholeness that God wants us to be.
I believe that it can. I believe that for me, what's important is that the scripture you began with, Matthew 25. I was in prison and you visited me. And for years I read that in one way, and then when I started doing prison ministry, I realized something that Francis has also said in a number of his writings. It's that we don't bring Christ, we go find Christ there. And suddenly it's like looking beyond khaki uniforms, tattoos, criminal records, and seeing the face of Christ in the men and the women that are my parishioners. I tell the guys, I am a parishioner, I am a pastor in a parish, and when people leave my parish, I am thrilled. I am happy to see them go, and I don't want them to come back.
Father Marty, that's beautifully, beautifully put. And whether it's prison ministry, hospital ministry, family ministry, I think that's a beautiful way of thinking that it's just not bringing Christ, it's finding that Christ that's in that prison, on that sick bed, in that child playing football, or it doesn't matter.
Whatever.
I mean, that's right. It's really, that's a great way of looking at the great gift God gave us.
He's
Tell me how that-
already there. We just got to look for him.
Yeah, and sometimes we hope and pray that they look inside of us and find him inside of us too.
Amen.
Yeah. Tell me, is there a lot of Dans like that, or a lot of folks that are?
There's a good number of Dans, and there's some folks who are not yet to where Danny, I believe, has gotten. So the work goes on.
The work goes on.
The work goes on.
Did Dan's participation in the ministry expand beyond just the studying, or going to mass or studying?
Well, when he was at a different prison, he was the clerk in the religious service office. So he did all the running with all the, when guys asked for Bibles and rosaries, Danny was the guy who had to go bring them, whatever it was that they asked for. But he also had a lot of respect even amongst the corrections officers, because they gave him a lot of
I
responsibility.
think way back when I was in the military, that was called the chaplain's assistant or something like that.
Yeah, they don't want to call
Not
him.
that I was a chaplain in the military. I didn't mean it that way, but based on your experience with Dan, how do you think prison ministries impacted his reform?
I think it impacted it because he was able to get back to what he had been and what he wanted to be again. And that was, get back into his Catholic faith. And the first time I met him was because he wanted to go to confession.
Beautiful.
And as he said there, he wanted to throw out the garbage.
That's so, this year of mercy with Pope Francis, that can't be said any better than that. And I hope, our viewers realize that they can help you and folks like you, Father Marty, to see the Christ. I don't care if it's someone in prison, in the hospital, in the mirror, as long as we can keep finding Christ. Bless you. Thank you so much. Pray with us. Be with us. Look in the mirror and let the Christ in you be a part of the great gift of love to raise someone else up.